The Alabama-Tennessee game feels like a college football playoff play-in game because the stakes are so damn high. I hesitate to say this, but it feels like the stakes haven't been this high in Alabama-Tennessee for quite some time, maybe going back at least 20 years, because the third weekend in October, we all know Alabama and Tennessee play each other, and Alabama and Tennessee hate each other, and somebody is going to light up a cigar at the end of this thing. But knowing that both Tennessee and Alabama have at one point been ranked inside the top four, if not the number one team in the country at some point in this year, knowing that Alabama is in a moment of real change with Kalen DeBoer, and knowing that Alabama has a streaky quarterback in Jalen Milroe who can be the best player in the sport if it's his day, or can lose you a football game if it is not. We saw that against Georgia. We saw that against Vanderbilt. And on the other side, you have Josh Heupel's Tennessee, a program that has risen to prominence in large part because Heupel has been so good at putting the right quarterback in the right situations in an offense that scores and scores and scores. The problem with that is basically since Kent State, it is a program that has lost the ability to score. That has been their calling card in the Josh Heupel era. Only this year are we beginning to talk about what Tim Banks' defense has been able to do against everybody they have played so far, which is hold them in check. His front line, his defensive line, is one of the best in all of college football. They can rotate 8 guys in there and feel good about it. Are they great on the back end? No. But you don't have to be great on the back end if you can get pressure with 4. And they have consistently got pressure with 4 against everybody they have played so far. That isn't saying a whole lot because we're still waiting on what Tennessee is going to show us against really good football teams. But against Oklahoma, they got home. Against Arkansas, they got home. Against Florida, they got home. Problem with that is defenses have figured out Tennessee football. Defenses have figured out Nico Iamaleava. Defenses have figured out that they're going to max protect more often than not, and Nico is going to have to wait for somebody to get open or make it happen. The thing that they have done better than I think anybody expected them to do was run the football really well, particularly with Dylan Sampson. That man is going to get you 100 yards on the ground, mostly because you're going to face light boxes, because they're going to have 4 guys out at receiver, and they are going to try to take you sideline to sideline and give Dylan Sampson as much green grass as he can have to make people miss. Other side of this is an Alabama defense that is reeling. They gave up 40 in a loss to Vanderbilt. Right? They gave up 25 in a game that they should have never been in doubt with against South Carolina, quarterback that, frankly, just a tad better than the guy that they faced against Oklahoma, and worse, frankly, than Taylon Green at Arkansas and Lenore Sellers. I think Alabama looks a lot like 2019 Oklahoma. They will score, and they will probably win more football games than they lose because they're going to score more points than you. But when you get into these games against quality opponents with quality defenses, you're going to have a defense of your own as well. That is why I think Tennessee has to feel good about this game, better than it did even in 2022 when they got their first win against Alabama in 16 years, right? Now, Nick Saban is gone, right? The tyrant, the despot that was Alabama football's head coach left a void. And it felt like for a moment there, Kalen DeBoer was exactly the right guy to fill it. Because remember, they were the number 1 team in the country. And people still think of Alabama, I think, as being Nick Saban's child. They have to. Because they're still a top 10 team despite losing to Vanderbilt and damn near losing to South Carolina. Meanwhile, Tennessee got docked 3 spots in the AP top 25 for beating Florida. I don't understand that part, especially when you take into account that Florida beat Mississippi State like they stole something, and Mississippi State kept it a 10-point game against Georgia just Saturday. Now, on all of this, you've still got a couple of really good matchups left for both of these teams. So a second loss for Tennessee would I think almost certainly kill their opportunity to make the college football playoff because they got Georgia later in Athens. Feels like that's going to be a really difficult place for Tennessee to win. even if they are able to get this win against Alabama. On the other side, you've got a Bama team that's already got the one loss. They take this loss to Tennessee. They still got LSU down the line. That's not a game that I think is a gimme for them by any stretch. It could look a lot like the game against Ole Miss that LSU just played. All this to say that as we're looking at Alabama and Tennessee in this early look, I would ask you, which quarterback right now do you trust to go get you a bucket? And today, the answer to that question is Jalen Milroe. On the flip side, I would ask you, which defense do you expect to go get you a stop? And that would be Tennessee. That is where I think we're going to see things bend and or break, and we get to see these two teams separate. I am ecstatic about this game being on the calendar, as Texas and Georgia are also going to play on the same day, because we're going to see what I think are the four best teams in the SEC facing off against each other for the first time this year. And it would not shock me in the least to find out that these four teams make the college football playoff in some shape or form. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. They all feel really good. Texas is the best of the four, but Texas is far from perfect. They have flaws. They just don't have as many flaws as Georgia, Tennessee, or Alabama right now. Particularly, they ain't lose to Arkansas or Vanderbilt or Alabama. You know what I'm saying on that one? Also gets to me to the point to where Texas is finally going to have to play one of these teams that we think is good, and we get a real read on them, not unlike Oregon, Ohio State. I think Josh Heupel needs to find out whatever is ailing Nico Iamaleava in that passing game and get it fixed. Because if that happens, you can do what you need to do against Bama, and you can make this into a game where, okay, cool, we're very safely in the playoff right now, especially if we're able to beat Georgia later in the year. On the other side, I think Kane Womack's got a real difficult fix. I think the fix for Josh Heupel is easier with Nico Iamaleava in that passing game than it is for Kane Womack to fix a defense that is leaking everywhere. They had 4 takeaways against South Carolina, 3 before the game-ending pick, and they still damn near lost that football game because Alabama couldn't stop Lenore Sellers and Rocket Sanders. That's a bad look. There's no way of making that look good. Your players on that side are your players on that side. There's only so much you can do to protect them with your scheme. And if you are Heupel, you're going to go fast. And if you're going to go fast, you're probably going to find these players who are perhaps not as talented as Squirrel White or Brew McCoy or Dylan Sampson trying to match up in real time. And going fast is a great way to pick up easy yards and junk yards. And that's one of the things that I think Tennessee does better than anybody else in football. So now Womack is going to have to go with base more often than not, just because getting the calls in there as quickly as he's going to need to, it's going to be nearly impossible, which means that your guys on the field have to be your best 11 at all time. And the guy wearing the green dot has to be as good a communicator of the defense as you are as the defense coordinator. It's a tall task. It's not just a tall task because it's Kane Womack's defense that he is delivering and teaching. It's a tall task because the guy wearing the green dot also got to make tackles. He also got to make plays. He also got to be in the right spot at the right time. And he's got in the process of making sure everybody else understands their responsibilities while Tennessee is running downhill at you. The winner of this game is going to make me feel much better about their college football playoff opportunities. I mean, by virtue of the fact of beating what I think is a top 25 team in Alabama, top 10 team in Tennessee. Barely, right? But if Texas were able to beat Georgia, you feel great about that being Tennessee or Alabama, right? Because you're right back in this thing that is, the SEC championship game with Texas A&M still needing to play Texas at the end of the year. Say nothing of what LSU's got to run up against the rest of their way. You got ends here. So the best thing you can hope for if you're Alabama, Tennessee is a win plus a Georgia loss, right? Or if you really want to play and gamble with it, Georgia gets the win against Texas, but then they'd have the best win in all of college football over the number 1 ranked team in the country away from home. I don't see you doing better than that. So I think you really do want Georgia to take this loss and let Texas continue to just set the pace like Max Verstappen, and then you pick up what's left so you can get into the playoff, and then you could probably get a one-on-one with them and try to shoot them down in the SEC championship game or later on in the playoff setting itself. It's a fascinating weekend. Really good stuff on tap for this week 8 of college football. If you like the show, please subscribe to the channel. We're closing in on 115,000 subscribers. Be very cool if you are one of the folks to join us here. Deuces.